Have you ever been in a situation where you had an opportunity to say something and it was so important that you kept repeating yourself over and over ahead of time to make sure that you had your words just right? You wanted to make sure that you said just the right thing in just the right way. So by yourself, maybe in the mirror, maybe pacing back and forth, you just kept reciting it over and over to get a great grasp of exactly what you wanted to say. Maybe it was a job interview, maybe you had a presentation to give at your work, or maybe it was something really important. Maybe it was about a relationship that you had, whether there was a relationship that was in turmoil and there was some conflict, or something that you haven't yet told someone that you know that you have to talk to them about. And you were so concerned because you love them and you want this to work, but you know this is not going to be easy to hear. So you're going over it and over it. Or maybe you have a relationship that has been fractured. You no longer talk to this person anymore, but you want to talk to them and you want to say the right thing. So you're going over and over those words to make sure that you say the right thing and you don't say the wrong thing, and you're controlled, and you make sure you choose your words to communicate honestly. This is something that I do all the time. There are pathways in my carpet that you can tell when I'm walking because it's just me. I'm a pacer, and I will go over and over because I really love people, and as much as I'm not a flexible man, people that know me know I do have an incredible ability to take my foot and to place it all the way into my mouth. I do this somehow without, the ability to touch my toes, but somehow this foot just gets lodged in there all the time. I like making jokes. I'm a humorous guy. That's just who I am. So I make jokes sometimes, and sometimes with those jokes I offend people. And then I have to remove that foot from my mouth and apologize for the jokes that I've made. I sometimes speak really openly and honestly. That's one of the things that I think is an important value. An important principle is to be honest, transparent, and real with people, which means I can also offend people. Made a lot of jokes about Trump. I'm sure some of you like Trump and didn't like those jokes. Hey, I like to make jokes about Trump. That's who I am. That's part of it, right? And so that's the trade-off. There's trade-offs that we make when we're honest with people. We sometimes break down relationships because of that honesty. We can sometimes offend people because we're honest with people. And if you really want authentic relationships with people, you have to be willing to spend that price. If you want to be able to have a professional relationship with someone, you don't have to spend that price. That price might not be worth it to spend. If someone in the grocery store says something that I happen to disagree with, I might just kind of say, I'm going to keep passing by, not make a big issue of it. And I mentioned actually last week that someone was asking me why in Christianity we have so many fights, why we argue so much. Well, hopefully it's because we are authentic around each other and that we care a lot about what we're talking about. And that's the recipe for arguments. Every family knows that. I have yet to meet a family that has never argued amongst each other because they're passionate and they have different perspectives. Great, that's awesome. I remember the day that I was in economics class and my world changed from then on. It was when I was introduced to the concept of opportunity costs. And from then on, the way that I made decisions changed forever. So that's the one thing I remember learning in high school, by the way. In the opportunity cost discussion, they shared an example of how if you were thinking about getting a t-shirt for this little slip of paper, this little value of money, right, whatever it is, you're probably going to do it, because what's the paper worth? Nothing. And what's the t-shirt worth? Something. You want the t-shirt. But then, if you think about the fact that that paper has dead presidents on it and can also get you some food, and you're hungry, and say you can't get both the food and the t-shirt, that changes how you make the decision, because now there's a very real opportunity cost associated with it, and you might change what you're doing. Okay, that's the basic concept of opportunity costs. And it doesn't just work in economics, it works in everything. If I choose to talk to this person, I might not be able to talk to this person. If I choose to make this joke, I might alongside with that offend people. And that's an opportunity cost that I make in making a joke. If I choose to be real and honest about how I feel, I choose also to sometimes really offend people. And in those choices, you learn a lot about who a person is. When they make an opportunity cost, a value judgment, they're choosing, hopefully, the thing that they see as more valuable. And that's when you really start to get to the surface of what makes someone who they are. We can learn a lot about Jesus looking at the opportunity costs that he made. Looking at the value judgments when he decided between this group and that group who he was going to talk to, who he was going to spend time with, who he was going to speak the language of. In this illustration that Jesus has, he was talking about two different groups. There's the Pharisees. Now, a little down low on the Pharisees. The Pharisees are equivalent to really the pastors of today, to be honest. They know their Bibles and they know them well. In fact, it's rumored that most Pharisees could quote to you by memory the first 5 books of the Bible, known as the Torah. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. If I had to pick 5 books of the Bible that I had to memorize, they would not be it. I was just talking the other day with someone that was talking about trying to read through the Bible. They started at Genesis, in the beginning was God, and they started writing, or it's actually in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. I messed that up too. I started in John because that's where I recommend people starting. Is to start in John. If you're starting the Bible for the first time, please do us a favor, start in John, because what happened to her and what happened to a lot of people is they started in the beginning and they ended so-and-so begat so-and-so begat so-and-so. They lived such and such many years, and then they begat so-and-so, and then they're like, okay, and I get the point. And they closed the book, and that was it, right? They were done. But these guys had those memorized. That's crazy. And they believed in trying to reform the people. The people were getting farther and farther away from God. And they said, we need to get people back to God and what's written about God, so they were doing the right things, and they were obeying the laws. All the principles that we're supposed to do, eating such and such amount of vegetables a day, right? Getting 8 hours of sleep. These people were doing all of those things. They were even going beyond. They were getting 9 hours of sleep and eating 4, portions of vegetables. These guys were overachievers. They were doing the right things. We paint them as a bad guy because we see how Jesus talked about them. But we forget who they really were historically. And then you look at the other group. The other group talked about as the tax collectors and the prostitutes. Now, the prostitutes, their reputation hasn't really changed much over the last 2,000 years. Tax collectors, however, have gotten a slightly better reputation. We still don't like them very much, but we don't think of them as much as the crooks that they were back in the day. I still do, but most people like them a little bit more. This time of the year, we like them a lot less. In fact, Leslie, who gave her sharing today, she pretty much makes a living out of the fact that people fear the IRS. So they go to her and her firm and they do the taxes for them and everything because we so dread this IRS agency. But it was way worse in the day. They were criminals. They would extort people. They could get as much money as they wanted from people, so they would steal from people. And the best parallel, I think, is probably mafia, right? The mob. And they were dysfunctional. I mean, their lifestyle is not defensible, which Jesus never defended their lifestyle. But when Jesus had an opportunity cost of who he was going to spend time with, when he had an opportunity cost of who he was going to surround himself with and make his community, there were very few Pharisees. Now, there were some. It's not like he just rejected all of the Pharisees because they were Pharisees. But he spent a lot of time with those mafia people and those prostitutes. A lot of pastors will share with you about how Jesus supped with prostitutes and tax collectors. And they'll say, in the Jewish culture, this was a very intimate thing. So it was a big deal. But they won't explain exactly why. And I'm going to go a step further and explain why. So I'm sorry if this bothers you, but this is pretty realistically what happened. Back in the day of Jewish culture, when people ate, they started when the sun went down. That's when they had their Jewish ceremony. The Jewish ceremony that they'd have for their meal was pretty long and it included drinking multiple glasses of wine. Okay, that's just the Jewish culture and what they would do, and then they would eat together. And at this point, it's pretty late in the night. It's pretty dark outside. Now, does anyone know where Jesus lived? Was it a condo at the beach? Apartment? House? Anywhere? Nowhere? No home, nowhere to lay his head is the phrase that's used in Scripture to define his status. What would we call that nowadays? Homeless. The most accurate, likely definition is actually couch surfing. There's a lot of people in this community, it's true, couch surfing, he was a couch surfer. A lot of people are defined as homeless, but they actually sleep in houses. What they do is they surf from couch to couch. They basically live in a friend's house as long as that friend will put up with them, and then they go to another friend's house. And we've even had youth kids that they are couch surfers. They don't have parents that have a place for them, so they surf in different couches. Well, Jesus was a couch surfer, and what's another thing that people didn't have that we have nowadays when we're at a party late? Okay, so you're at a party late, you're going to go home. How do you do it? Uber it. Very modern man there. He knows, yeah. Uber it. Or you get in a car, you turn on the headlights, and you drive home. Not too bad. Hopefully you didn't have too many drinks. Oh, then you definitely should Uber it. Okay, but that's how we get home. They didn't have cars. They didn't have headlights. Sometimes the houses were many, many miles away, and they'd have to have a torch, and there was thieves. So this was not a smart idea. So it was the Jewish custom that when you ate at someone's house, you slept there. Now let's put this together. Jesus ate and drank with tax collectors and prostitutes, and very likely slept there in the houses. Now, before I go on, I know many of you are going to be tempted to say, hey, Richard said it was okay to live with IRS agents. And I'm not saying that. That could get you into trouble. Okay? So please do not use it as an excuse to go live with an IRS agent. That's not okay. I know none of you would be tempted also to say that I said it was okay to live with prostitutes, but that's really not your main temptation. It's the IRS agents, I know. I, of course, believe that Jesus lived a sinless life. But here's the point. He had no walls. Talk about being the same when you're in public and in private. There was no walls between Jesus and the people. He not only ate and drank with these people, they were his community. He did life with them. He did life with the prostitutes. So that when he had a bad day, they would know it. When they had a bad day, he would know it. And I'm personally convinced that there's no way that you can really make a difference in someone's life if you're not willing to do life with them. If you're not willing to be transparent and honest with them in your brokenness and to see what theirs is. There's a song that maybe one day I'll have Kate sing it. I won't even ever try. That's not going to happen today. But there's a song that I love the idea of it. It says, "Let me see beneath your beautiful." Let me see beneath your beautiful. What an awesome illustration. I want to get to know the real you. And I, as a pastor, have made the choice, the opportunity cost to say, I want to be the same guy up here that I am in the bar when I go there. I want to be the same person in my house that I am when I'm in the grocery store. And the opportunity cost of that is that sometimes I don't look great when I'm here. Because I got to be the same, and I can't keep this up forever, right? So then that's who I'm hoping to be. Jesus, in my mind, the reason I'm doing this is because Jesus made the same opportunity cost. That's why I live my life that I try to live according to how Jesus did. And sometimes it baffles me, the opportunity cost that Jesus gave up. Because these people, they debated about the scriptures. He could have been there with people that were educated and knew all these things about God and people of influence and power. And he chose not to hang out with any of them. He met with like one of them at nighttime in secret because he didn't want to be seen with one of the Pharisees, one of the rich rulers. Like Jesus was like, I'll be fine with the prostitutes, but I don't know about being seen around with Nicodemus, this rich, educated young man. I don't know about that. I want to be careful. And I think there's a lot to learn about that. So we as a Christian community can often make the mistake of getting wrong what is exactly our community. We are called 923 Community here, a ministry of Christ Church. And in that community, we say, because we're a community together, and we want to bond together. But let me be clear about this. We are also saying that we are part of the community of Vero Beach, which includes a lot of different churches and a lot of people that don't have church even on the radar. And that is part of our community. There's a movie that I love. It's one of my favorite movies. It's called On the Waterfront. Just a show of hands, has anyone seen On the Waterfront? How many people we have? Okay, a few. And no kids or young people. So, sad. For those of you who are vaguely familiar with movies, if you've heard the phrase, I could have been a contender, I could have been somebody, except for a bum, which is what I am. This is from On the Waterfront with Marlon Brando. But my favorite character is the priest. We don't often get good priests in movies. I think the last time it's happened was this movie, which was probably made in like 1950s. So this is the last good priest I've seen in a movie. But it's an awesome guy. On the waterfront, there's a mafia that controls the docks, right? And because they control the import-export docks, they control the money. And they're able to get rich and extort, steal money, just like the tax collectors did, steal money from people. And they get away with this because if anyone tells on them or threatens to tell on them, they're going to be swimming with the fishes, if you know what I mean? They're going to be cut off. They're going to be finding themselves with bricks on their legs and, thrown into the ocean, okay? So this father eventually says, I've got to do something about this. So he starts to get people to try to be motivated to push against this corruption. And he gets one guy to do it, and they kill him. In the docks, on the waterfront. They kill him. They arrange an accident. They drop this thing on him. And so this priest goes down to the docks to collect his body. And I love it because in this movie, in this scene, there's actually this pit that he's going down into the pit. And I love it because it's such a beautiful example of the difference between sympathy and empathy. I saw it in a video once, and I love to describe it. Sympathy is looking down at someone who's in a pit and saying, it looks pretty dark in there. And empathy is going down into the pit with them and say, let's climb up together. Well, this priest was going down to the docks. He was going down into the pit with his people. And he said these lines, and this is one of my favorite speeches. He said, some people think the crucifixion only took place on Calvary. They better wise up. Taking Joey Doyle's life to stop him from testifying is a crucifixion. And dropping a sling on K.O. Dugan because he was ready to spill his guts tomorrow, that's a crucifixion. And every time the mob puts the crusher on a good man and tries to stop him from doing his duty as a citizen, it's a crucifixion. And anyone who sits around and lets it happen, keeps silent about something he knows has happened, shares the guilt of it just as much as the Roman soldier who pierced the flesh of our Lord to see if he was dead. At this point, they started yelling at the priest to get him to be quiet. One guy threw it at him and said, "Go back to your church, Father." And my favorite line is his response. He looked at them in the docks, in the pits, and he said, "This is my church. This is my church. And if you think Christ isn't down here on the waterfront, you've got another thing coming. Every morning when the hiring boss blows his whistle, Jesus stands alongside you in the shape-up. He sees why some of you get picked and some get passed over. He sees the family men worrying about getting rent and getting food in the house. And what does Christ think about the easy money boys who do none of the work and take all the gravy? And how does he feel about the fellows who wear $100.50 suits and diamond rings and on your union dues and your kickback money? And how does he feel who spoke up without fear against evil feel about your silence? He goes on. He says, Christ is always with you. Christ is in the shape-up. He's in the hatch. He's in the union hall. He's kneeling right here beside me. And he's saying with all of you, if you do it to the least of these, you're doing it to me. And all of you, and only you with God's help, have the power to knock them out for good. Now let me bring that to reality for us. God, Jesus, is with us in the boardwalk. He's with us on the beach, just as he's with us on the golf course. He's with us in the bars, and he's with us. He's with that young man who's shooting up for the first time. He's there with the drunk that's puking out their guts in the bathroom. Jesus stands there, and he stands with each one of us as we choose what we make part of our community, who we make part of our life. He's there with us. That father in that movie chose to make the docks his church. He chose to make the docks the darkest and dirtiest place of their community his community. And Jesus did the same. Jesus looked at the most broken and the most dysfunctional people that were in the most desperate need, and he said, you're my family, I love you, and I'm here for you, and I'm not leaving. And so we live our lives based on that opportunity cost. Now he goes on further, Jesus, and sharing an illustration that's known as the prodigal son. And it's essentially so rich that it could be talked about for years, but I won't stand up here for years. So I'll just share this. It's essentially about two people, two brothers, an older brother and a younger brother, both with different excuses why they aren't going to come to the party, why they aren't going to be part of the community, why they aren't going to be part of the family that God has for them. The older brother, he doesn't want to be part of the party because he followed the rules. He did what he's supposed to do. He lived a good-looking life. As a slave, he did everything that his father told him to do. What's the problem with that? What's the problem with that? He did the rules. I tell you what the problem with that is. He seemed to miss out on a lot about what that father thought family really was about, because he served as a slave. You look at this father and you look at his example and his love and his celebration over family and life. He didn't seem to care much about rules. He seemed to care about love. And this brother, who had done all the right things for so long, missed the point entirely. And some of us decide we're not going to join the party because we look at the other people that are invited and we say, no, no, no. I don't want to hang out with those people. Well, then we can't be in the party. If we want to live according to our rules and regulations, our standards of judgment, then we have no right to be in the party. And we get to miss out. And you can have that party all by yourself amongst a bunch of other older brothers if you want, but you're not going to be partying with Jesus. You're not going to be celebrating with the Father who is love. But there's another person that had a reason why they weren't at the party. It was the young man who thought he could throw a party according to his own rules. And so he went out and lived that life and did whatever he wanted. Used all that God had given him for himself and did whatever he could. And he realized pretty quick it didn't work. He realized pretty quick that it was lonely and it was sad and he was starving and he was hungry. And so he came back to the Father, and as he was walking back, he started to rehearse those lines, like that many of us have rehearsed. That deal, okay, God, I know the deal. I know that I am way too good or way too bad for your goodness. I know that I'm way too broken for your wholeness, and I don't expect you to make me whole. I don't expect you to make me part of your family. Just let me be a slave. And he's going through and he's rehearsing these lines, as many of you have rehearsed before, of the deal that he's going to make with God. And you know what? It doesn't matter. The Father isn't even paying attention when he starts to say the lines, because the moment he sees the Son from the distance walking towards him, he starts running like no established man who cared about his principles or appearance would. He started running just like a father who loved his son so deeply that he didn't care what the son said. He's just coming back, and that's all it takes. He's just coming back, and that father runs, and he wraps his arm around him, and he gives the nicest robes and the rings, and he slaughters the fatted calf. He does everything to celebrate. Let's throw a party because my son was dead, and now he's alive. We can celebrate. He's returned. Maybe you think you don't deserve to be in this party. Maybe you feel like you don't deserve the love of God. Maybe, as Leslie shared earlier, you feel like God couldn't possibly love you. I understand. Because there's nothing that we did to deserve it. There's nothing that we did to earn it. But if we resist that love, we'll never know what it's like to be in that party. If we instead decide that we want to turn and go towards God and accept, we get to learn what family is really about, what love is really about, and what our Father in heaven is really about. Maybe some of you have followed the rules, followed the regulations, and you look and you say, wait a second, this is a double standard. I got news for you. There's only one standard in which we can be saved, and it's the standard of God's grace for us. That's it. That's the only standard that allows us to be in the party, is God's grace for us. And God wants us to experience the kind of love that covers over a multitude of flaws and errors. If we get real with him, if we be honest with him, then no matter what the list of things that we say, Leslie was talking about the list that she had to confess, of all the things that she's done, I don't care how big that list is. I don't even care how current that list is. If you give that list to God, he is faithful to forgive and to let you celebrate. So I want to celebrate at a party. We're going to have, at 12:15, after the service, a little get-together on this new property. We're going to have some food. We're going to have a little bit of a party of the family of God. Older brothers and younger brothers, we're all accepted, and we can be at this party. Don't resist being part. Don't let your hang-ups stop you from being part of the party of God. Now, there's a song that some of you guys might know, some of you might not. People that are my age or younger might not. But it's a beautiful song about celebrating at a party. It's a wonderful song with energy and life. And I know that some people really don't like doing recites in unison, but I want to just do an exercise, if you bear with me. Is that okay? You do this for me? Okay. All right. I want you to say the words together, your love keeps lifting me. Keeps lifting me higher. Okay. So I'm going to point to you, and you're going to say, your love keeps lifting me.
Your love keeps lifting me.
And when I point with this hand, keeps lifting me higher. Keeps lifting me higher. Your love keeps lifting me. Keeps lifting me higher. We got it? Your love keeps lifting me. Keeps lifting me higher. Just one more time. Love keeps lifting me. Keeps lifting me higher. Once, I was downhearted, and disappointment was my only friend. But then you came, and it soon departed, and he never showed his face again. That's why your love keeps on. Yes, I say your love keeps lifting me. If over the past weeks, however long, maybe your whole life, you have